Hey guys, this is Dubuisson, and this is the first video in a series of videos detailing the process behind creating and implementing a user story. Now, these videos are meant to aid new developers working on the BreazeHome project, and for the duration of this series, I'll be detailing the creation and implementation process for the user story number 2416, which pertains to providing users the ability to view competitions for properties on the BreazeHome system. Now, if you guys have any questions pertaining to the user story process after this video, please feel free to contact me. And if you have any questions about the BreazeHome project as a whole, feel free to contact Professor Masood Sajadi, who is both the mentor and product owner for the BreazeHome application. I'll be posting both of our contact info at the end of the video. Now, in this video, we'll be going over the basic Scrum methodology towards software development as it pertains to the BreazeHome project. We'll also be going how to create the user story number 2416, how to manage the tasks for that user story, and how to complete a requirements elicitation that can be turned into a use case diagram for this user story. So for the BreazeHome project, we'll be using the Agile development model and specifically the Scrum methodology. So there are a couple things to remember, such as the daily Scrum, where the development team plans the next day of development and brings up any impediments they may have towards production. You also have a sprint planning, which is done at the start of each sprint and is done to inspect the product backlog of user stories and identify what's most valuable to be done next. There's also the sprint review, which is done at the end of each sprint, and it's where the increment of product resulting from the sprint is inspected. And you also have the sprint retrospective, and it serves to inspect the last sprint and plan for improvements to be enacted in the next sprint. Now remember that for the BreazeHome project, each of our sprints will be lasting 2 weeks. So in addition to these key events that occurred during the sprint, there are also certain key actors, such as the product owner, who focuses on prioritizing work that should be done for the engineering team. And for the BreazeHome project, Professor Sajadi will be acting as a product owner. You have the development team and developers, and for the BreazeHome project, the people working for the project will be the development team, and in this case I'll be the individual developer working on this user story. And our task is essentially to deliver a shippable product in increments after each sprint. And you also have the Scrum Master, whose task is to coach the team to help remove any impediments that they may have and to just optimize the workflow. And for the BreazeHome project, Aaron will be acting as the Scrum Master. So the first thing that has to occur in the lifetime of a user story is its creation. Now these user stories can either be created beforehand by the product owner, created by the team in the user story workshop, or by the developer by talking with the product owner. Now for the BreazeHome project, user story management and creation will be done on the Mingle website right over here. Here you can see what user stories Professor Sajadi has requested for a sprint and create new user stories for his approval. Now if you want to see a complete tutorial on how to use Mingle, now there's a tutorial on the BreazeHome wiki, which is more than enough for your needs. So for this tutorial, we're going to need to create a user story for the view competition for property. Now it's already been done, but if I hadn't already created it, it's as simple as just clicking this plus button and filling out the appropriate details. Now what are these details? Well, there are 3 major things you need to include in a user story. When you write in the description, you need to include the who, what, and why. You need to write who this user story is pertaining to, in this case the user, what it is you're trying to accomplish, in here to view competition for a property, and why it is you're trying to accomplish this, which is right over here, so I can realize which properties are more interesting in people's point of view. right? These three things are key when you're writing a description for a user story. Once you do that, then you're going to fill out the acceptance criteria, which you'll use to validate any implementation of this user story. After you finish a user story and implement it, you're going to want to make sure that it satisfies what it is you want to do. And this is the acceptance criteria you're going to use to check it. So once you've created a user story though, remember that we're going to need to get the approval and feedback from the product owner. So what you're going to do is you're going to message Professor Sajati, who's acting as our product owner, and tell him what it is you're trying to accomplish and see if he has any feedback and if he approves on the user story. Once we get that feedback and approval, which we have right over here, it says looks good, then you can move on with actually implementing and working on this user story. So with the creation of this user story and an approval, what we're going to do now is go to the sprint board and actually create tasks for our user story. Now I already have some tasks created for this user story all the way down here, and as you can see they're all in the to-do column. So all these tasks are waiting to be done and haven't been implemented yet. Once I have decided to start working on a task, I simply just click and grab it. So in this case we're going to work on use case diagram later on in this video and place it in development. Later on, when I have finished development and want to test it, I'll move it to testing, and finally I'll click and move it into done when I'm done with a specific task. So for this task we're going to move it into in development, since this is what we're going to be doing later on in this video. Now as you work on this user story throughout the sprint, whenever you work on a new task or you create a new task, you're going to go to this sprint board and either create a new task, which is as simple as clicking this plus button or going down here and dragging a card over here. And once you've done that, then you can either start moving into development, testing, and finally into the done phase. So we'll be doing this sprint planning on Mingle at the beginning of each sprint, and we'll be working with the Mingle sprint board as we work on the user story tasks throughout the sprint. And now that we've actually created the user story and identified the who, what, and why, filled out the acceptance criteria, and have received the go-ahead from the product owner, we can now move on and start work on the requirements elicitation for user story and create a use case diagram for these requirements. Now, the requirements elicitation is fairly simple because when we created the user story number 2416 and we created the acceptance criteria, those acceptance criteria are essentially the requirements elicitation for this user story. Okay? Our user story needs these requirements to be successful. So we need to be able to view the total count of a property. We need to be able to view the weekly count of a property. And we also need to be able to view the amount of times a property has been favorited, because those are the three acceptance criteria that we put on our user story. So that's going to be the three requirements in our elicitation. Now, once we have the requirements elicitation done, we can then move on and create a use case diagram. And in the use case diagram, we're going to have a use case for each of these requirements. This use case diagram will be created using star UML. And this is a brand new use case, star UML page. The first thing we're going to do is go to our project title and change it from untitled to BreazeHome, the name of our app. We're then going to change the name of this folder to BreazeHome use cases, since this is the folder where we're going to contain all the use cases for our project. And if we look in this folder, it already comes with a default diagram. But we're going to delete that, and make sure to delete from model always. And we're going to right click on our use case folder, go to add diagram, and we're going to add a use case diagram. And first thing I'm going to do here is change the name of our diagram so it reflects what these use cases will encompass, and we'll just put property competition. Right, and next thing we're going to do is create an actor for our use case diagram. If we look at our user story, we see that we have a user that's looking at all this information on the property details page, right? So if we go to the Start UML, we can be really generic with it, and we're going to click actor, click on our diagram, and name this actor user. If we wanted to, we can name it home buyer, agent, but actually, let's actually name it home buyer. All right, so here is our first actor. If we look at our BreazeHome app, all the information of a property is on its property details page. So we're going to click on use case, and the first use case we're going to have is going to be property details right here. We're going to make an association between the two. So we click association, click on the actor, and release on the use case. All right. So if we think what's in property details is going to contain the property view count. Just property views, actually. So property views, and it's also going to contain property favorited count. All right. So we're going to have these two things that are contained within our property details page. Since they're included in the property details page, when we make an association, we're going to actually click the include association, and we're going to go from details to property views, details, oops, see the details right there, if we click include again, details to the property favorited count. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to add two more use cases. First one being the total property view count, views count, and we're going to make another one called the weekly property views count. So let's drag this so we can see it. All right, let's move everything. Drag it over. All right. Okay, so if we think about this, these two property views, it's just an extension of basically our property view use case over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to click the extend association and make sure we do the association from the total property view count to the property views. We're going to click extend again and make the extension from the weekly property views to the property views. All right. And now we've got the basic outline of our use case diagram. Okay, we can go more in depth and create packages, since all this is basically part of the real estate package in our BreazeHome app. If you wanted to, we can put all this in a package, such as what we have over here. We see here, this is packaged in the real estate, and we can add other actors who also use this.
But this is essentially how to create use case diagram from the user story that we have right now. Okay, and if we look over here in our model explorer, let's shrink everything down or collapse everything. We can see all the use cases, and we can also see our actors. All right. I generally like to put all the use cases as inside of the actual use case diagram. So if you want, you can do this. Just click and drag them into the use case diagram. This is solely just so that I can collapse and make everything easier to navigate when I have a larger project. And we'll leave our actors outside of the use case diagram because later on when we have more use case diagrams, you might need to reuse these actors, and it's easier to use them if they're outside of any one specific use case diagram. Okay, and now that we've completed our use case diagram, we've essentially completed our requirements elicitation.
That concludes this video. We made a brief overview of the Scrum methodology. We also created and managed our own use case via Mingle. And we created a requirements elicitation for use case number 2416, with which we created a use case diagram on StarUML. In the next video, we'll be doing the requirements analysis for this use case, as well as working on the system design for the user story, before finally creating class and sequence diagrams also using StarUML. Now, if you have any questions for me, please feel free to contact me via my email right over here or via LinkedIn. And if you have any questions about the BreazeHome project as a whole, please feel free to contact Professor Masood Sajadi via this email right over here.